Welcome back for a special Monday night episode of 10 Minute Horror. We're going to be listening to part 2 of the story we started on Friday, so mix that drink and get some chips and salsa going. This is Don't Look Behind You, part 2. I leaned against the wall of the grave, wondering how this could all be. What was I doing here? Then it hit me. Jeff was here, somewhere in the mausoleum. If I could find him, maybe that was how I'd get out. Or maybe I'd be led into a trap. Either way, I didn't want to wait in this grave any longer. I climbed out. The grave beside me had a hole dug up through the center, like something had pulled itself out. The gravestone said, Harvester, 1691 to blank. I thought back to Jeff in the graveyard. While playing, his character had picked up a key in the rose bushes near the entrance to the mausoleum. It's what allowed him to get inside and try to leave the property. I needed that key. I set off across the graveyard, wind whistling between the stones and shadows taunting me. I felt like I was being watched from every angle, silhouettes of the harvester peeking out from behind tombs. I made my way towards the garden on the side of the mausoleum. It took me a few minutes of nervous searching, but I found a bronze key with a skull for the bow sticking up from the soil like a flower. I unlocked the back door of the mausoleum and entered. Slivers of moonlight highlighted the edges of hundreds, maybe thousands, of sealed coffins in the walls. The mausoleum all of a sudden seemed so much bigger inside. Crying echoed through the endless halls. It sounded like Jeff. I hoped it was. I followed the crying. It led me down several hallways before I heard it coming from the walls. I checked one of the seals and saw it had Jeff's name written on it. I pulled the handle and yanked the coffin out. There was thudding coming from inside, and the lid burst open, Jeff screaming and gasping for air. He hugged me when he saw me, and I helped him out of the coffin. He was shaking uncontrollably and said the harvester had taken him and pulled him through the TV. The next thing he knew, he was stuck in that coffin. He was crying far too loudly, and the sounds were echoing through the halls. I quieted him down and told him we needed to get out the front door. We moved through one aisle, then another, and another. Finally, we were back in the main hall. I saw the front door way down at the far end. We rushed towards it. Somewhere behind us, the harvester screamed out, "Don't look behind you." I felt Jeff's body shift to turn back, but I yanked him forward and told him to keep staring straight ahead. We kept running. The voice screamed out again, this time closer. We kept running and got to the entrance as the words bellowed behind us. We burst through the door and slammed it shut. Nothing followed. No banging on the door or screaming. Silence. We turned around to see we were now facing a wall of tall, dark trees. It was the forest Brad didn't make it through. You could barely see 5 feet into the woods. It was just too dark. How the hell were we supposed to make it in there? Then Jeff remembered that there was a flashlight near the entrance of the woods. At the beginning of the game, Brad rolled a 2 and missed getting it by 1 digit. We could avoid that in person. There was an entrance a few yards to the left that led onto a path that disappeared a few feet in. We jogged over to it and found the flashlight sticking up from the bushes. It worked and gave us a slightly larger window of vision through the woods. We moved down the path, which was barely that. It was only about a foot wide and filled with gnarled roots and branches. We had no idea how we were going to find Brad, but he was lost in the darkest parts of the woods, so that's where we were headed. Jeff and I got to what felt like the middle of the forest. It was pitch black all around us. I stopped Jeff and turned off the flashlight. It was like our eye sockets were cut. Everything went black. Then I heard crying. Brad's. I turned the flashlight back on and we followed the crying. It got closer, but so did the sounds of twigs breaking somewhere behind us. I reminded Jeff not to look back, no matter what. Finally, my flashlight hit Brad. He was wrapped up in vines, which we had to break and pull apart to get him free. The twigs behind us kept breaking. We got Brad up and moving, and I hustled them down the path. I had no idea where I was leading them, but hoped it would be to wherever my little brother was. A scream echoed through the forest. It was the harvester, saying he was coming to get us, and to turn around and see. I yelled not to listen to him, and to keep running. The voice kept yelling, getting closer and closer. We could feel his cold breath on our necks. Then, we all fell forward and slid across a slicked, tiled floor. We were all immediately soaked in a foul mix of innards and blood. We were in the slaughterhouse, in what appeared to be a spare parts room, or maybe it was for bleeding out. All I could see were a million shades of red, covering the walls and floor, and my best friend's pale, sickly faces in the midst. Bone saws of all kinds screeched out, echoing through the vast warehouse from some not too distant room. I could hear Davy's whimpers under them somewhere. I put my hand down to lift myself up and found it pushing into the stomach of what appeared to be a pig. Vomit rose in my throat. As I was pulling my hand out, I felt my hand grip onto something hard and handle-like. It was a large knife. I remembered back to Davy playing and just missing landing on a square with a blade he would have picked up. I threw up anyways, but held the knife tight. Jeff and Brad got up with me, and we peeked out the doorway. The hallway looked to be never-ending, impossibly far into the distance and lined with doorways. It was filled with small piles of body parts of animals and people. I saw the upper torso and head of a woman resting atop the body of a hog at the peak of one mound. The bone saws continued to screech out. It was almost unbearable, but I kept hearing Davy's low screams and yells under them. I rushed down the hallway, trying to follow the sounds. Brad and Jeff were several steps behind, clutching each other the way I did with the knife held in front of me. The screams got closer, but so did the bone saws. "Don't look behind you," echoed out above them. It felt like they were going to be in the next room we passed, but I saw Davy instead. He was locked in a rectangular cage at the bottom of a pile of loose body parts. I rushed into the room, inspecting the lock to get my brother out. The key. I pulled it out and found it fit the lock perfectly. The cage snapped open, but as it did, the floor under it gave out. Davy and the large pile of bloody extremities fell, dropping 10 feet and landing in what appeared to be... Oh no. They landed in a living room. The floor was old wood, rotting, the deterioration of a long abandoned house. I'd been inside it only once before, but I knew it well. It was the old Wagner house and was said to be haunted. I'd been dared to go inside and retrieve a photograph from the master bedroom upstairs. The only way in was through a basement window that hadn't been barred and boarded up. So that's where I started. I'd gone through the basement, up and through the first floor living room, and to the staircase. The second floor, I didn't make it past the hallway. As I was walking to the master bedroom, the attic door hatch popped open and the ladder leading up slid down. I turned and ran back downstairs and out through the basement. I never got the photograph and lost the dare. Now, here I was, looking down into the same living room. Jeff screamed behind me. The harvester was here. His voice shrieked into the room. "Don't look behind you." I kept my eyes forward, grabbed Brad and Jeff, and pulled them over the lid of the cage. We fell onto the living room floor of the Wagner house. I looked up and saw the harvester leaning over the cage. He pulled himself over to jump down onto us, but it all disappeared and became the ceiling of the living room. His voice echoed down to us though, repeating those same 4 words. It all happened so fast, I didn't realize I was laying right beside Davy. He didn't either, so when I grabbed him and we locked eyes, tears overwhelmed us. I knew we didn't have much time though, so I picked us up and rushed Jeff and Brad to the basement staircase. We sprinted down into the dark cellar, squeezing between a massive ancient furnace and the wall. The window was just on the other side. It was a tight fit, but I led us through to the... Oh no. The window was gone. It was all wall now. We were trapped. A metallic screech came from inside the furnace. It sounded like a series of sharp blades scraping across metal. We were going to die down here. The 4 of us. Trapped like rats. Wait, no, there was one other way out. I remembered it from the first time I saw the house. At the very top, under the highest arch, there was an attic window that was empty of glass or a frame. It led out onto a roof that could be easy enough to climb down. We just had to go upstairs to the drop-down staircase, the one that sent me running from the house a year ago. That was it. That was the way out. We'd have to go up it. The metallic scraping got louder. I yelled for the boys to go back upstairs. We squeezed back out as the furnace started to rumble. Heat began emitting from it, and the screeches got louder. "Don't look behind you." We kept moving and got back up the staircase to the living room. We rushed back over the pile of body parts, slipping through the blood-soaked wood. Up the next set of stairs, I was leading with Davy's hand held tightly in mine, but I slowed down as we reached the second-floor hallway. It was empty, quiet, and dark. The drop-down door was closed. Shit, we'd have to lift each other up to pull it down. I led the boys forward. Then, from the bottom of the stairs, the harvester's words yelled up, "Don't look behind you." Our necks stiffened, again trying to contain the natural urge to turn. We continued on. Suddenly, the drop-down door swung open and the ladder shot down. We all fell into each other, collapsing backwards. As we did, I looked up into the small rectangular doorway in the ceiling. Light from a window streaked across it. There it was, our way out. I pulled Davy up and yelled for Brad and Jeff to hold on tight. We formed a chain and climbed up the ladder into the vast attic. I could see the open window at the far end. It was still there. Davy tripped and pulled me down with him. My grip let out on the knife and it It skittered forward. Jeff grabbed it quickly, and him and Brad sprinted for the window. I got Davy up and made chase. Behind us, I could hear something large shambling up the drop-down ladder. It made me run faster. Brad and Jeff climbed out the window and reached in for us. I pulled Davy with me, but we both went through the window at the same time. I felt a cold hand wrap around my ankle. I looked down and saw the harvester's face glowing in the dark. His other hand was wrapped around Davy's ankle. He had us both. He was pulling, yanking us back down into the darkness of the attic. Davy's grip was loosening on the window, and I knew he wasn't going to last any longer. I let go of the window and slid back into the attic, knocking the harvester's grip from Davy's ankle. I yelled for them to run. The harvester landed on top of me, his stringy hair blocking out any light from the window. He leaned down, opening his mouth to bite, when a sliver of metal slashed through the air. The harvester fell back, the handle of the knife I found sticking out of his neck. I felt 3 sets of hands grab my shoulders and yank me up through the window. Brad, Jeff, and Davy, they saved me. I stood up outside on the roof and looked to the other side of the street. I could see home. The windows glowed outward, warmly. It felt so different than the rest of this world. We rushed out along the roof to the edge of the rotted shingles. One at a time, we climbed down the pipe to land on the grass. Jeff, Brad, Davy. My eyes were focused on the window. I kept waiting to see the harvester's face appear, him climbing out and after us, but he didn't. It was my turn to climb down, but my eyes never left the roof. As I was halfway down, I heard the front door of the house slam shut. Oh no, he was outside. I threw the key down to Jeff and yelled for them to run. I jumped the remaining 5 feet and took off across the street. From my peripherals, I could see the harvester was near, but I didn't dare look back. I ran hard, but felt him gaining behind me with every step. That cold breath hit the back of my neck. Jeff and Brad were inside home now, and Davy was just entering. They were all waiting for me. I heard the harvester's voice whispering over my shoulder.
Don't look behind you. I'm right here. I'm right here.
I kept running, up the front walk, and to the door. I never looked back. The front door slammed shut behind me and cut off the harvester's voice. I shot up in bed. We all did. I was on the top bunk. Davy was back on the bottom bunk, and Jeff and Brad were in their sleeping bags. We all had the same knowing and horrified expression. No one said anything, but we all knew. The harvester was on the TV. The timer was just ticking down to 0. His voice creaked out from the screen, disappointed, saying we'd survived the game and to come back anytime, if we dared. But to remember, don't look behind you. The TV went to static fuzz again. It stopped, then started to self-rewind. I jumped down from the bed and ejected the tape. I pulled all the film out and tore it to shreds. We packed the board game back up and snuck out to the garage, where we grabbed a can of kerosene and some matches. We took the board game out to a park nearby and lit it on fire in the empty public pool. We left it burning there. The next morning, we all played it off like it was a bad dream, even though Brad no longer had the large board game he'd shown up with. Him and Jeff left before lunch, and Davy and I agreed we didn't want a TV in our room anymore, so we got rid of it. We now unplug the one in the downstairs living room every night. We've postponed the horror club indefinitely, and Davy and I are thinking of trying out baseball cards next. And that concludes part 2 of Don't Look Behind You. We hope you enjoyed this 2-parter, and we'll be back this Friday night with some more chaos for you.